Americans woke up this morning to bad news for their bank accounts. They woke up to a grim reality that Donald Trump is not going to keep his promise to lower costs. They woke up, Americans woke up to an era of Trumpflation.
Let Donald Trump fix the American economy.
But just to follow up with you, when the first time he did tariffs, we did see prices rise on products that were tariffed. That's according to Goldman Sachs compared to non-tariff products.
We have the lowest inflation ever.
The manufacturing sector went into a mild recession in the fall of 2019. What gives you so much certainty? And by the way, this is more aggressive and the economy is in a different place with inflation and consumer sentiment. What gives you so much certainty that this is going to work and that this isn't going to hurt the everyday American?
The largest tariff and trade barrier country in the world is China, and they don't have inflation.
Trump promised that he would lower costs, in fact, on day one, but what we've seen under his reckless leadership is that costs aren't going down in America. They're going up. Inflation is going up.
Breaking moments ago, brand new numbers showing inflation fell last month, much better than expected.
So this was actually a drop of 0.1%, negative 0.1%. That's the first time we've seen that since COVID. Year over year, the annual inflation rate was at 2.4%. This was also better than expected and a 6-month low, moving in the right direction.
Well, that would equal where we were in June of last year. To find a lower number would be 0 in January of 21. These are definitely low numbers.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So we got to talk about some more good economic news for President Trump. News that he's not going to get credit for. But I told you guys for months now, when these people started talking about tariffs and inflation and how mass inflation is certainly going to happen. Remember, these people told us, that just the thought of tariffs happening is inflationary, right? That prices were already rising, okay? It was getting out of control, and that this mass inflation is going to happen because of the tariffs. Now, lo and behold, the March inflation report has shown that the rate of inflation is declining. In fact, we're almost back to the 2% goal that the Federal Reserve has. So are any Democrats going to come out and congratulate President Trump or give President Trump credit for what's happening with inflation? I guarantee you they're not, right? They're going to be silent. They're going to find something else to talk about. Just a few weeks ago, they were boo-hoo-wide and crowd about egg prices. Egg prices declined significantly. And now crickets, they ain't got nothing to say, right? Oil prices are down. They ain't got nothing to say.
Yes, these are March reads on the Consumer Price Index, coming in under minus 1/10 on headline. Minus 1/10. We're expecting the exact opposite. We were expecting up 1/10. Minus 1/10. Well, we equal where we were in May of 2020 to find a lower number. You're all the way to April of 2020, the heavy COVID-affected months of the calendar. If we take food and energy out, still coming in on the under, up 1/10. We're expecting triple that number, up 1/10. Well, that would equal where we were in June of last year. To find a lower number would be 0 in January of 21. These are definitely low numbers. Now, let's look at year-over-year perspective, shall we? Up 2.4, we're expecting 2.6. 2.4 would equal where we were in SEPA 24. You have to go to Feb of 21 to find a lower number. Now let's go year over year. X food and energy, expecting 3, comes in light, 2.8. That follows 3.1. 2.8 would be lowest since March of 21. These are really low numbers. Now let's look at initial and continuing claims, shall we? On the initial claims, we're looking for a number that would be roughly in the 224 camp, comes in at 223, very close to expectations. And if we look at the continuing claims, last month they reached 1.903 million, and once again they revised it away. 1,893,000 is last month, and the new number 1,850,000. That really is a nice drop. And if we want to comp, the last time we were at that level, well, it would be the last week of January when we were under 1.84. So that would be your comp. You could see yields haven't moved under in a dramatic way, but I will say there's a bit of irony here considering all the tariff stories on inflation. To see these numbers coming in light for March, Well, it's somewhat enlightening.
Yeah, enlightening for the people who went along with the mainstream liberal media narrative, the same people who claimed that inflation was transitory, the same people that claimed that Biden's economy is not in a recession, right? You mean to tell me that they didn't know what they were talking about when it came to whether or not tariffs would cause this mass inflation, right? You mean to tell me those people who've been wrong about basically everything when it comes to the economy for the last 4 years, who lied to us for the last 4 years, oh, they're wrong again. Wow, surprise, right? Very surprising. I'm not surprised. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there may not be price increases going into the future, especially considering how there are 100+% tariffs on China. But it's not as simple as all of that is going to be passed on to U.S. consumers, right? It's not that simple, okay? Because China has ways of manipulating their currency in order to make their goods cheaper to produce. And they're probably going to try to do that. They're going to try to dump their goods on the world, which means that some of that tariff, China is just going to eat, right? And right now, I personally believe that China, they are selling U.S. treasuries in order to prop up their economy, right? And one of the reasons why I believe this is because 10-year yields were rising as the stock market was declining, okay, from the fear over the tariffs. And that didn't make any sense because most of the time when the stock market is falling, people are going to be running to where they feel safe, which is going to be government bonds. So if you see yields going up, that suggests that somebody's selling, right? And what happened just a couple days ago with yields shooting up so much strongly suggests that a country is selling. Now, the liberal media is pushing this idea that, oh, well, it's Japan, right? The Japanese government, they're selling U.S. treasuries.
You're not getting a break. China, President Trump raising tariffs on Chinese goods to an astronomical 125%.
Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy joins us live. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. And a lot went into President Trump's decision to pause the tariffs. He watched Republican senators for an hour on Hannity on Tuesday night and then talked to them for about an hour afterwards, according to the Washington Post. He also gave more authority with public statements to the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and he watched as our ally Japan started dumping Treasury bonds. According to an item in the Wall Street Journal today, President Trump was prepared for the new tariff policy to lead to a recession in the United States, but the concern started growing that there could be a depression. That is what he wanted to avoid. That is why they got ahead of any kind of a decline like that with this pause. Back to you.
And Peter, so you said that the country of Japan was dumping the U.S. treasuries. And that's one of the red warning lights there on the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. But China, who right now is our trade adversary, China owns close to $1 trillion worth of U.S. treasuries. So if they started dumping them, that could be not a good thing.
That would be a problem. And there are also reports now that the Chinese are going to try to essentially take their new position as the White House is trying to make them the bad guys of trade in the world, that they're going to just start flooding the world marketplace with cheaper goods, not only to hurt the U.S., but also to hurt other American trading partners. And so that could be their way around if there is not a deal soon. Obviously, that's something that can't happen overnight, but the Chinese are known for building huge entire cities very quickly. So if they want to start building factories to flood the global marketplace with cheap goods, they could.
The liberal media is pushing this idea that, oh, well, it's Japan, right? The Japanese government, they're selling U.S. treasuries, which to me makes absolutely zero sense because, one, their government came out and said, no, we're not going to sell our treasuries in response to the trade war, which also, again, wouldn't make sense for them to do that considering how Japan was like the first country to say, hey, we want to make a big deal, right? So like the logic behind them doing that doesn't make sense. But again, this is what the mainstream liberal media is saying. Who knows? Maybe they could be right, but they're not right for the right reasons. Okay. If Japan actually was selling U.S. treasuries at the time, it's because they have been slowly dumping U.S. treasuries in order to prop up their own currency, right? So any selling from Japan, again, would not have been in response to the tariffs. But again, I'm basically trying to tell you guys, like, explain the narrative that the media is trying to create, because they're still trying to undermine President Trump in this trade war. And I'm just explaining how all of it kind of works, right? So logically speaking, in my opinion, China has to be doing that. Why is it a big deal, okay, if China, okay, or some other country is selling U.S. treasuries, right? The reason why it matters is because that pushes up interest rates, okay, and it makes the cost of borrowing more. And in the United States of America, there are a lot of companies, okay, mainly hedge funds that are over leveraged. And if the market was to tank too much, then some of these institutions probably would have collapsed, okay, just due to the fact that again, they were way too over leveraged. And that is what Wall Street was really freaking out about. I'm telling you this to explain to you guys why is it that there will be a narrative that's being pushed in the media that, oh, Japan dumped their bonds, because they're trying to paint a narrative that the world is losing confidence in the US dollar, right? And when you have investors during a time of volatility, right, and chaos, when they are not running to the US dollar, right, when they're not buying treasuries, which would make yields go down, when they're selling treasuries, which is yields going up, again, that suggests they're going somewhere else, right? They are going somewhere else. They have more confidence in another country than the United States of America, which would challenge the US dollar as the world's safe haven asset, right? The safest asset in the world, which again would essentially be a big problem for our financial system as a whole. Okay. Now, is that happening in reality? No, there's no evidence that what President Trump is doing is actually leading to that, but they're putting that narrative out there because they want him to stop the trade war, right? They do not want him to continue to escalate with China, okay? Telling the truth and saying that, no, it's actually China. They're the ones that are selling U.S. treasuries, because just by basic logic and common sense, of course they are. I was watching the treasury yield go up as some big Chinese stocks were also rising at the same time. So it's obvious that they're selling treasuries to prop up their economy and to hurt the United States of America. That's what they're doing, okay? But to tell the truth about it, right, to say, hey, well, actually, this is China, right? And also, again, a bunch of hedge fund managers, Wall Street, being afraid because they're over leveraged, right? That's actually the problem. When that's the narrative, instead of the dollar being under attack, right, the dollar's about to collapse under Trump, when that is the narrative, then, hey, President Trump, that's much easier to sell to the American people for why, we're going to continue with maximum leverage. But again, the narrative is designed to continue to undermine the president. All that is to say that when you listen to what the media says, especially when you talk about the economy, it's not based off real economics or anything like that. It's literally based off narrative. It's based off what they want you to believe, right? Like they want you to believe there's going to be mass inflation. Why? So that you expect and you're okay with paying higher prices. But what actually really happens, okay, or what I believe is more likely to happen, I'm not saying there won't be price increases as a result of the tariffs. My point is that if there is price increases, that is not the same thing as inflation, because if consumer demand decreases as a result of the price increases from the tariffs, then that in and of itself is not inflationary, right? In fact, that is likely to drive down prices, okay? And I'm not saying it works out like that every time, but I'm just saying that that component of a reduction in consumer spending is often overlooked when it comes to the tariff conversation, right? That and also currency manipulation, other factors, right? Like there's a lot of factors that go into this. And it's really not that simple, okay? But again, the mainstream liberal media, they think that people are dumb, okay, that you're not going to think for yourselves. And you definitely see that when it comes to the economy, right? They literally just say things that really don't make any sense. Like, no. Like, in order for the inflation thing to make sense, when it comes to tariffs, you have to believe that consumer spending is going to increase as a result of the tariffs, right? That people aren't going to stop buying stuff when things get too expensive, which, again, it doesn't make sense, right? If tariffs go up too much, if prices increase too much, people are just not going to buy the stuff. So yes, we probably will, okay, see some price increases as a result of these tariffs, especially with the tariffs on China. But that's not the same thing as inflation. That's what people really need to understand. It's not the same thing. Inflation is primarily a monetary phenomena, right? Like, again, these people really think that the American people are dumb when it comes to stuff, right? So, all that being said, don't be surprised if we see more volatility in the markets, right? I know that everybody was celebrating about what happened yesterday, but the trade war is not over. I think people are now realizing, oh, wait, we have 120+% tariffs on China, that we are in a full-blown escalation of a trade war with China, that in and of itself is going to rock the markets moving forward into the future. Because again, what are they afraid of? They're afraid of a decline in consumer spending. So with that being said, I want to react to this clip from MSNBC of Kevin O'Leary schooling this anchor who is going to be boohoo whining crying about President Trump raising tariffs against Chinese goods, right? I think it's now at 145%. Okay, so yeah, President Trump is ratcheting up the war, and Wall Street don't like it. And you guys got to understand, these media outlets, including Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, they're all Wall Street, right? Entities at the end of the day. Okay, so Wall Street does not like this. And that's why you're seeing a lot of the propaganda coming out right now, because again, it's Wall Street.
It's the government. They cheat, they steal, they don't play by the rules, and I've had enough. And so I would like this thing worked out. I don't care about the volatility. I don't care if Trump ratchets it up 25% a day.
What do you mean? Wait, Kevin, what do you mean you don't care about volatility if volatility has a direct impact on us as the consumers?
Because we have to fix this problem once and for all. It's killing us. It's killing small business in America. It's killing large businesses. All the IP these guys steal. You go back and look at all of their technological advancements, and this is a personal estimation, you're going to find source code from American companies back 4 decades ago. These guys don't play by the rules. And administration after administration, whether it be European or American, have not dealt with this. It's enough. We've got to solve this problem. Okay. Now, if we have to squeeze Chinese heads to the wall, as I said yesterday when I was testifying, so be it. I'm willing to live with the volatility to get the long situation settled. I want to compete in China. I want to open up those markets.
If what you're saying is carried out to its ultimate solution, you're talking about the fact that China, the regime, has a system in place that is able to manipulate the world, its currency, and everything else because of its totalitarian nature. Now, we can talk about what happened in 48. We can talk about what happened with Taiwan. We can talk about everything else. But Kevin, it's a reality. The Cultural Revolution in China killed millions of people so that people would remember that they had to remain silent. What you're saying is, I've had enough with China, but
you're good with it?
No,
you're okay with it?
No. On the contrary, but what I'm asking you is, what is the solution to dealing with China, a system that systematically violates human rights,
Here's how
and
it
that
works.
is able to use?
Well, you asked me, I'm going to tell you.
Well, the solution is simple. The solution is to economically cripple them for doing that, which apparently is something that this guy is against, right? He's against it. But again, I'm trying to tell you, a lot of these dudes in the media, they are just mouthpieces for the corporate establishment, right? And again, I'm not against Wall Street. I'm not against I'm not on any type of like socialist propaganda here, right? That's not what I'm on, right? But I'm just saying that ultimately at the end of the day, Wall Street doesn't like change, right? They're thinking about short-term gains, right? They want to know, okay, in the next year, in the next few months, what are things going to look like so that they can bet, right? So that they can make money, right? But again, they don't have a long-term outlook anymore, okay? And when they don't have a long-term outlook, when you have these types of changes, it's going to be very uncomfortable for them. And this guy is panicking about volatility. Volatility happens, okay? But in times of volatility, you have to stay the course, okay? You have to stay the course. Ultimately, this is a problem that we need to address. Personally, as an entrepreneur, I would much rather be able to build products here in America because dealing with China is a pain in the ass. I've had to deal with China before when it comes to product development. It sucks, right? It sucks for multiple reasons. One, there's a language barrier. Two, you have limited ways of verifying whether or not you're getting something quality when it comes to product development. They cut corners. There's no intellectual property protection. So if you create something, then they'll turn around and go sell it on Alibaba for other people to directly compete with your business, or they'll just compete with your business directly, right? They'll just copy whatever they did for you and start selling it. And then once you get the product, if it's a bad batch, okay, if the products don't work because they're, again, cheaply made, badly made, there's limited recourse for getting your money back or for getting replacements. And again, it's just a whole lot, right? And you got to deal with shipping, lead time, stuff like that. Like, it's a lot. And it would just be much easier as a smaller entrepreneur to just do all that here in the United States of America, right? It would be much easier, okay? And that's what I think the Trump administration is trying to do, right? Having domestic manufacturing come back to the United States, or at the very least shift it in a way that is more favorable towards the United States, will help spur entrepreneurship in America, because we don't have to deal with China, right? When it comes to making any type of unique product, right? It is really hard to make things in the United States of America without having to go to some of these other countries. We just don't have the capability. So again, a lot of this really is about Wall Street not liking the fact that stuff like this in the long run will make it easier for Main Street to compete, right? And that's what they really don't like.
Okay. He's the supreme leader for life. What keeps him in power?
Yes.
Keeping his people employed and fed. Now, when you shut down a factory, I think Janice Mackey-Frere just on before me, he's talked about this. When you shut down a factory, you put thousands, if not tens of thousands of people unemployed in China. They take burning torches, just like in a Frankenstein movie, up to the castle, and that's a bad outcome for the supreme leader. He knows that. Now, what's the largest consumer market on earth? The United States. Almost 40% of all goods consumed worldwide. What's the largest GDP? 25 or 26% GDP of the world? The United States of America. China needs the United States of America. We have the upper hand right now. We have the cards. Now's the time to settle this, because we may not be the largest economy forever, but right now we can squeeze Chinese, and I'm talking about the government, not the people, to comply with the laws and get a level playing field between China and the United States of America. If it takes a little volatility, a little indigestion, a little acid reflux, I don't care. I want this thing worked out now, because I can show you countless occurrences of where I have backed, as an investor, a company that gets to $5 million in sales with a consumer good or service on Amazon, on Alibaba, and then as soon as it hits $5 million, it's knocked off. They steal the IP, they manufacture it there, they sell it back into this market. I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with that anymore.
That's the nature of the regime. So what you're calling for is a regime change in China?
No. We don't have to change the regime. Xi has to come to the table and understand he's got to work this out. Otherwise, there's a bad outcome for him. And listen, there's something else you should be aware of, and I saw this happen yesterday. It's now public information. This Paul Atkins guy was confirmed for the head of the SEC. And why that matters, I don't know if you saw that letter from Rick Scott, but he said, I'm not going to confirm you unless you agree to uphold the law that the previous administration did not uphold about delisting Chinese companies that do not abide by GAAP. There's billions of market cap right now listed on NASDAQ and NYSE companies that I have to compete with. I have to pay for the compliance costs. I have to be transparent. I have to abide by the law, and they don't. And they raise money with the same bankers I use, and I have to compete with them, and they're not being transparent. They have to get delisted. And Atkins, I guess, they must have had an agreement because he got confirmed. As soon as he gets sworn in, start delisting these Chinese companies. This law was modified to only give them 2 years to abide and actually comply, and they didn't. So delist them. Why should I have to compete with them? Let's squeeze them. Just keep going and going and going until they start complying. That's what I want.
Yeah, I think Kevin O'Leary, I think he's onto something, because he's right. If we do half measures, Xi can just wait it out, right? He got a lifetime. He's a dictator. He's an emperor, okay? So, I mean, honestly, he can just wait it out. And this is why you can't go half-ass with it, right? If you go half-ass, then again, you're not going to accomplish what the goal is, right? Which again is to rebalance trade in our favor, okay? That's what we really want to do. And that's why I expect this to continue to ratchet up. There's going to be a lot more volatility. I think the markets are now kind of pricing that in, given the fact that there was a huge movement upwards yesterday when people just had a sigh of relief that it wasn't going to be the worst of the worst. But still, what is happening to China, we are going to continue to ratchet up. And that's why it's so silly when these liberals, the liberal media Democrats, come out here and say, oh, Trump folded. He folded. How did he fold when he put 100+% tariffs on China? How's that folding? That's not folding, right? And he's ratcheted up. These people are silly, right? They're silly. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.